Good evening. How is everyone tonight? Good. I'm so glad that you came out tonight. I am really, really glad that the session is over. It was an interesting experience, and I was very proud to represent House District 18. And I got lots and lots and lots of people say, thank you for being here and thank you for winning. And because they knew my predecessor there, and they were excited to have someone that was a little more on the conservative side and not on the moderate side. So I was very honored to be there. Sarah, Brent, thank you for y'all's service to the community and for what you do here in Liberty County. We're going to do this in an exchange if you want. I'll give you some information. Wes, I'll email it to you because it's a lot of bills and stuff, but I will email it to you later. And so let's start with the Republican Party of Texas priorities. How many of you were at the convention last round? Okay, good. So I was there too. We voted on these priorities. We had the list. And to me, you might have heard me say it, those are the marching orders. That's what we're working on, and that's what we support, and that's what we vote on, and that's what I was ready to go to work for. Unfortunately, in some of the priorities, bills went nowhere. And so let's just back up for a second. Let's just talk about that for a second. The very first rattle out of the box in December was the caucus meeting, the Republican Party of Texas caucus, the House Republican caucus meeting, where we had to elect the speaker. And as y'all know, at that point, there were two candidates that had emerged that were going to be running, and that was Representative Cook and then Speaker Burrows were the two that were going to run. The rules of the Republican caucus tell us that whoever wins that caucus vote is who we support when we go to the floor. Well, we're sitting there in this room with all the 88, I believe it is, Republican members, and they are negotiating all of this, and we're talking back and forth and all this, things that are happening, and then all of a sudden, that whole group gets up and walks out on the third vote, toward the third vote. And it's one of those things, many times this time, that if I had not seen it, I would not believe it, that it happened, but it did happen. And so they all walked out, and then we were just sitting there, and there was all these negotiations going on back and forth with leadership from our side and leadership from their side. David Cook had won, and it was very obvious because the vote percentages changed, the requirements changed, and so they knew that David Cook was going to win on that next ballot. And so they all walked out. After a while, we thought they were going to come back, and I'm talking about a while. This was several hours. They never came back, and they went on and claimed David Cook, claimed victory, but he was the legitimate winner because we did take that third vote, and he won. So he was out doing a press conference. Speaker Burrows went into the House press room and made declaration that he had won. And so, of course, everything happens on the first day. We're sworn in, and you've got all your family there, especially as a freshman. You have, I had all four of my kids and spouses and grandkids and my husband and all of that. And my two brothers and my sister were all there. And so it's this big euphoric kind of thing going on. And you're sworn in, and then they all have to clear the floor, and we get to work. And so, I had to give air hugs to a lot of people, and hugged my four kids and my husband, and that were sitting next to me, and they left, and we got to work. And the first vote is for the speaker because no work can happen. And let me tell you, this seems like it was years ago, but it was only 6 months ago. So the first vote was for speaker, and all of the Democrats voted for Dustin Burrows, as well as that small group of Republicans, and so Dustin Burrows was elected as speaker. So that was the first betrayal. That was, when we knew it was going to be an uphill. Just make sure you understand, I voted for David Cook because that's who I supported from the beginning, and so I voted for him. And then we had to vote on the rules package that would determine how we handle ourselves throughout session. Well, they had the rules package completed, ready to go. We had all of these amendments. You know, one of the amendments I was going to offer was to have the 10 Commandments hanging in the House chamber. The House chamber does not have the 10 Commandments there. That's the basis of our laws in the United States and Texas, and it's not there. That was one of my amendments that I was going to add. Well, they went nuclear on us, and if you don't know what that means they pulled, no debate. And so none of us were able to add our amendments. We had to either accept the rules as they were or not. And of course, I did not. I voted against that rules package because of that, because they would not allow us to debate any of it and have any kind of say-so. To be honest, they were afraid of this class because, the conservatives really stepped up in this last election, and there were many that were elected throughout the state of Texas that replaced those more moderate members of the House. And so that's how that began. And so at that point, the slow crawl began, and everything just was nothing happening. And the speaker, let me tell you, these people, that we can suspend the rules to do anything. Okay, but they kept saying, well, we can't do that because of the rules. We couldn't do any of the Republican Party of Texas priorities. We have a Republican Speaker of the House. We could not do any of our priorities, even though we could have suspended the rules to do so. The governor, who some of his priorities crossed over, same ones, he put out his list. And he even had a press conference we all attended and all that. We could suspend the rules and take up any of his items in the first 60 days. None of that happened. Nothing happened for 60 days. We had nothing going on the House floor. And Speaker Burrows slow-walked getting committees assignments, all of these things that could have been done quickly and a little bit more efficiently. I'm a school teacher by trade. Let's get things done, and let's get things rolling. So that was all slow walked. Then the committee chairs came out. And what was one of the priorities of the Republican Party of Texas? No Democrat chairs. No Democrat chairs. Well, Speaker Burrows did live up to that, sort of. There were of all the standing and all the major committees, every one of the committees was chaired by a Republican. But he also put Democrats as vice chairs and gave them money. Why they needed money, I have no idea. But he gave them money to promote their side. Then in some of the committees, not all, but in some, there were subcommittees to kind of break up the work and spread the work around. And some of those, the majority of those subcommittees were chaired by Democrats. And I will send you the list, Wes, if you'll remind me. I have a list of all the Republican bills that died in subcommittees because they just didn't push them forward. So, and I'll send that to you so you can send it out. And it was a lot. It was a lot more than I thought because I was in two committees. I was in Homeland Security, Public Safety, and Veterans Affairs was one committee. That was one that I was on. My other committee was Pensions, Investments, and Financial Services. I asked for Homeland Security because of the issue we have here in Colony Ridge, and I was put on that committee. I was very grateful. I did not ask for Pensions, Investments, and Financial Services, but I was put on that. And so that was a big learning curve, and I learned a lot in that committee, and it really was a rewarding experience. But some of those committees had subcommittees, and they were chaired by Democrats, and they were given money also. And, so what was that money spent on? They could spend it on whatever they wanted to spend on. So anyway, so we went on, and that was when, so that was the first thing, was Democrat chairs, yes, sort of, but there was still a lot of Democrat influence in a Republican, not quite a super majority, but a good majority Republican House. The Democrats had a lot of control, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Y'all don't let me forget to talk about the last filing day when bills could be heard on the House floor. Don't let me forget to tell you about that. Okay, so some of the other Republican priorities. One was election integrity. And I'll have this list, and as I said, I'll get it to Wes and he can get it out to you. But election integrity was one of the Republican Party of Texas priorities. So there are things like we have a constitutional amendment. It'll be coming up on your ballot in November, stating that all voters must be U.S. citizens. Sounds simple enough, right? That's already in our Constitution, but we're going to state it again and make sure, because we are not where we were 10 or 15 years ago. We have a huge influx of illegal aliens in our state, in our country. So we're going to make sure that we have that covered. HB 1661, ensure precincts receive enough ballots so voting locations do not run out, and would create a penalty for those locations that fail to do so. So they're going to provide for that, make sure that we stay on top of everything. Would make sure voter rolls are clean and those previously registered in another state to inform of their voter registration in Texas. So there was a lot of things to clean up this election process. Requires courts to notify the Attorney General before hearings on election-related TROs to prevent secretive, last-minute rulings that could undermine election integrity. So we're trying to bring everything transparent, to make sure what we're doing is above board and that we are, that we're doing what we say we're going to do. Another one of our priorities was in the overreach, federal overreach. And we have several of those too as well to highlight. Just trying to see one here. Okay, here's one, SB 1362. SB is Senate bill, HB is House bill, in case you weren't sure. Prohibits state and local agencies from enforcing extreme risk protective orders, in other words, red flag laws, without state law approval. Prohibits using federal funds for that. So they were trying to come in with these red flag laws, and people could lose the right to carry their gun for protection with these red flag laws. And so we're prohibiting that, stop that overreach. Then some more of the overreach has to do with medical freedom. Allows Texans to sue vaccine manufacturers for harm caused by vaccines advertised in the state, with a 3-year window to file and potential recovery of damage and legal costs. So if they advertise a vaccine, we won't mention any COVID, but if if they advertise that vaccine and you end up with an adverse health condition from that, you would be able to sue that manufacturer of that vaccine.
Does that include the COVID?
Yep, any vaccine, yes, sir. HB 4535 requires written informed consent before giving a COVID-19 vaccine, include acknowledgement of state-provided risk information. Providers face discipline for noncompliance. And there was one. Oh, here's HB 4076 was a really good one. It prohibits healthcare providers from denying or delaying organ transplants based solely on a patient's vaccination status. Remember, they were saying if you don't have the COVID vaccine, you can't get your kidney transplant or your liver transplant, heart transplant. That's ridiculous. So this will stop that. So those are some things that have to do with the medical overreach. Here's one last one. SB 984 expands Texas' right to try laws. So if you're critically ill, a rare or ultra-rare disease, and it'll allow you to try some of these things that are, cutting-edge treatments. Sir?
Like experimentally?
Correct. President Trump was a big proponent of this, and so this codifies that in Texas, that we're allowed to do that. So those are just a few of the ending the federal overreach. There's others, but those were a few that I wrote down. So we talked about banning Democrat chairs, and we talked about that a little bit. Honestly, I think that needs to roll around. I hope the RPT rolls that around again and clarifies subcommittees, that kind of thing too as well. And no money to them. Because honestly, the things that I saw them spending the money on were gifts at the end of the session for the members on the board, Yeah.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
So, censure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, the way I read it, the way I interpreted the priority was no appointments of any chairs. And it seems to me as though he in fact appointed Democrats as chairs.
Right. Subcommittee
Correct.
chairs, yeah.
Correct.
So he will argue, I'm assuming he will argue, I don't speak for him. He will argue, well, I meant, that meant.
How would you recommend the SREC handle a censure that interprets it that way?
So, like say Liberty County does a censure of Speaker Burrows because he placed those.
Yeah.
I think there would be the arguments for and against that, obviously. But a chair is a chair is a chair is a chair, And because the original banned Democrat chairs does not say of main committees,
It
so.
doesn't even say vice chair. I mean, a vice chair is a chair.
Right. So I think the RPT at the very minimal needs to be very explicit on that priority if it rolls around again. I'll be there. I know y'all will be there. So let's make sure that happens, and it's very specific so that if the SREC does not accept that censure for whatever reason, well then the next time you'll have it, in black and white. The other one was ban taxpayer-funded lobbying, which went nowhere. There were bills,
You don't say.
but nothing happened from those. Rumor has it that we will have a special session. Rumor has it that this might be on there, the banning the taxpayer-funded lobbying. So we'll see, but I have nothing to report on that because it was not allowed to move forward. Again, could be in those subcommittee chairs, those committees. Let me tell you this process, if you don't know. You file a bill, and then the speaker assigns it to a committee, his choice. The author of the bill then has to beg the chair to have a hearing. You have to send letters, you have to send notes, you have to put a little piece of candy on their desk, I don't know, whatever, to try to get them to have a hearing. My Colony Ridge bill, to help with Colony Ridge, never got a hearing. It was sent to, let me think of the exact name of this committee. Allie, do you remember? It's the one, Trade and Workforce Committee. Trade, Land, and Workforce Committee. Has nothing to do with my Colony Ridge bill. But that's where it got sent, to a committee chair, Representative Angie Chin Button, who is in the Dallas area, and who just got censured by her party last week or somewhere in the last few days because of her votes and some of the things she's done. But she sat on it. I begged her. My bill became part of a negotiation toward the end when we were trying to get some things done with the Democrats and trying to get some things done with the Rhino Republicans. And she wouldn't do it. She just wouldn't do it. So what I had planned to help with the Colony Ridge just died. You all right? Need some water?
Yeah.
Is this yours? Here. There you go. When you turn red-faced, you need some help.
You couldn't believe the news about your bill.
Oh, well, me either. It was really sad. And two other bills that I had were taken by other Republicans. They just took them, including an amendment that one of them, I noticed that there was an irregularity in, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, there's a resolution, an amendment, constitutional amendment that we have to vote on, and then the bill that enables it. And there were irregularities between the two, and I pointed it out. I went and had an amendment ready to go, and he saw it in the system and took it. And anyway, so that happens too. And these are Republicans doing that. Okay, secure the grid was another thing. Now, Hardin County is entirely, are y'all entirely on Entergy here in Liberty County?
We got co-op.
Yes, some co-ops and things like that. Okay, so Hardin County is entirely on Entergy. So we're not part of the grid. You guys aren't part of the grid either, really, because you're in these co-ops and these other things. But we all remember the freeze when I felt so bad being nice and warm and toasty in my house when so many of my friends across the state were having busted pipes or else they were freezing and all that. So There were a ton of things to do to secure the grid, and I won't bore you with all of those, but I wanted to read just one here. SB 2148 requires biennial, so every 2 years, threat exercises with electric providers, the PUC, ERCOT, and law enforcement to ensure a coordinated response. If we're going to get attacked, they're going to attack the grid. That's one of the number one targets. And so this is going to keep us more proactive and making sure that we're protecting that grid.
Quick question.
Yes.
On ERCOT, do we still have people that come in from outside
No,
the state?
no. Governor Abbott banned that back right after that freeze and all that.
And we
So
just need to get rid of the turbine.
yeah, so yes. SB 75 created the Texas Grid Security Commission. That's growing government, so but there are some things that we've got to protect. And so they will assess ERCOT's vulnerabilities and recommend resilient standards. It's up for the Sunset Commission so that, it won't be on in perpetuity. So hopefully, we'll get the recommendations and then be able to disband that. So securing the grid. The next one, border enforcement. That was one of our RPT priorities. SB 8 was the big bill for that. And it's the ICE 287G program. If you're familiar with that, if you're in law enforcement, you're familiar with the 287G. If you're not familiar, basically it allows ICE to be able to go in and arrest the illegals. And they can either do it, there's two different ways, out on the street or within the jail system. The one they talked about the most was within the jail system. Also establishes a grant program to help sheriffs in smaller counties cover implementation costs. So I consider Liberty County a smaller county. We're more rural, and so our sheriff's department will have some extra money to help implement that and make it work. SB 8 also strengthens immigration enforcement and improve public safety across Texas. So I can't help but think that this will help with the Colony Ridge situation too as well. As y'all know, ICE and their group have been into Colony Ridge area multiple times since Trump took office and even right before. And so, but it's time to go in and make sure we take all of these people who don't need to be here and get them out. Just get them out.
One more quick question.
Sure.
Within that, is it true that they're defunding any more wall construction?
Well, that's federal.
Texas,
But Texas is not. I mean, Biden had, obviously done that, but Trump has put that back.
Texas was contributing to border wall construction.
Right, but now the feds have come back in and are doing that, so that's saving us in Texas that money that we were doing it ourselves. Yes. Texas is not for sale was one of our priorities. Being on the Border Security and Homeland Security Committee, we heard ended up being SB 17. It was HB 17 in the beginning, I believe, the House version. That was the one that says we will not sell our land to Chinese, Iran, North Korea, or Russia. If you are here and you're trying to buy, you're not going to be able to buy land. And if you have bought land, you will be divested of that land. So it was a good bill. It is probably the strongest bill in the United States. Texas has that strongest bill. And we were in hearings over 8 hours listening to testimony. And it went wee hours in the morning. It went late because we'd had session that morning, and then we went straight into the committee. And we listened to countless Chinese mostly people. Some of them were citizens, and it didn't apply to them. If you're a citizen here, it doesn't apply to you. If you're here legally, it doesn't apply to you. It applies to those, who are coming in here illegally and trying to buy our land around our critical infrastructure, our water treatment plants, our electrical out the grid.
Bases.
Yeah, the military bases, all of that. Here was one of my first shocks. We were there until it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning listening to these people. And At the end, there were some from Iran as well. Those were the only two countries that were represented. At the end, we'd heard all the testimony and all of that, and I was getting my things together, packing up things, getting ready to go, and I looked up, and Representative Wu, from, I believe he's in Harris County, he is a communist, but he's a state representative. He walks in the door, and oh my gosh, that told me everything I needed to know about him, because I didn't really know him at that point. All of those people were clamoring, oh, pictures and all of that, and it was sad. It was sad, but I don't know. I don't know if it's more sad that it happened or more sad that I wasn't surprised, But Representative Wu was egging these people on and providing for them, and and he's a communist. And that's just not me saying it. There's proof of that. So anyway, but we were able to get that through, so they can't own land in Texas. It also protects Texas's DNA from falling into the hands of hostile nations. If you ever have given a DNA sample for whatever reason, there's a lot of things in the court systems, things like that allow for that. Prohibits investing state money in certain foreign nations and prohibits deposits in banks headquartered in those countries. So none of this, banking stuff going on between. If it's on the list that the president lists as a foreign national, foreign enemy of the state, then those are the countries that are on the Texas land. That's what the bill says. If they're on that list, they're on our list. So anyway, so Texas is not for sale was a good one. Stop sexualizing Texas kids. It is such a shame that we have to have this as a priority, that it exists, that we have to do this as a priority. But there are many, many on here, and I want to talk about one of them that it's HB 4623. It holds public schools and their employees fully accountable for serious misconduct or negligence that harms students, ending immunity, protecting and putting student safety first. Public schools had immunity. Private schools don't. No other schools do. Public schools had that immunity, and so this removes that. So if you've got a teacher who's grooming kids, or I don't want to get too, because we got kids here, but you know what I'm talking about, then they can be prosecuted, and parents can get damages. Those kids can get damages. So that was a big deal. And if you were a viewer of Greg Gutfeld, that clip from this debate was on Greg Gutfeld. How many of you saw that clip? It was really funny because one of the Democrat lawyers from Harris County, one of the attorneys, she's always strutting her stuff. And Mitch Little, who's the attorney that defended Ken Paxton in the Paxton impeachment, who's now a state rep, he was at the front mic. It's his bill. And she strutted up there, and that's your phone, but she's scrolling her phone, for her language, for whatever she's, going to do. And she says, since private schools can now get state money, will they be immune as well? And it just proves she didn't know what she was talking about. He says, yeah, they already are not immune. I've prosecuted several of them, and it was just this golden moment. And I was sitting there watching it, and I was looking at her because I was waiting for her comeback, and she had nothing. She just had nothing, and she just goes, "Okay, thank you." After this long silence can be long, and it was probably only 2 or 3 seconds, but it seemed like forever, and it was so funny.
One of her golden moment is Randy Weingarten is out.
Yeah, well, anything she says is, yeah.
But she's out now.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, she's not out of the teacher union, she's just out of the Democrat Party or whatever. So another thing that was a really good thing, and it's a shame we have to do this too, SB 20 creates a new criminal offense for the possession or promotion of obscene visual material that appears to depict a child. So AI generated stuff, all of that kind of thing. It's all about protecting the kids. So we need to keep protecting kids. SB 12 strengthens parental rights in education, enhances access to student information, and reinstates an opt-in requirement for human sexuality instruction. Sometimes they do, where you got to opt out. Sometimes parents don't catch that, and next thing you know, their kids are coming home with something. When I was at Silsbee on the school board, it was always opt-in. Make sure it's opt-in, so if they want to do it, the parent has to say, yes, I want my kid to participate. So those were the RPT priorities. Do y'all have any questions about those, about the priorities? And I don't want to say, and I was going to talk about this in a minute, and I will, I don't want to say that this was the best session for the Republican Party of Texas Priorities, because it wasn't. I've been where you are for 20 years, being an activist, grassroots activist. I've worked with some of you off and on for years, so I understand the frustration, and I was ready to go to war for that. But we are cut off at the knees by the leadership, and that happens, and it's hard. It's hard, but we keep fighting. And you just got to learn the process and make sure you work through the process, but be firm and be strong on our priorities. And that's what I'll continue to do. So a few other things. Some of them had to do with the governor's priorities some of the things that you might be interested in. Some of you might be interested in property taxes. Anybody interested in that? So the talking points that we've been given, emphasize on that we've been given, is that we provided $51 billion in tax relief. True or false? That's false. It's not true. It's kind of hard to do that when you only have $26 billion in a surplus. Yeah.
Who provided this information to you?
We were given this information.
On the governor's priorities.
Yeah. So, not from the governor.
No. But on his priorities.
Yeah. Let me just give you some background. 2017 state budget was $235 billion. The state budget in 2025 is $352 billion. So how many years is that? 17, not quite, about 8 years. We've gone from $235 to $352 billion. We have a $24 billion surplus. So here's what we tried to do. We tried to eliminate property tax. I was a co-author on 3 different bills that were pretty much the same thing, little nuances different, but pretty much the same thing, to eliminate property tax. Guess how many of them got a hearing? 0. None got a hearing. So then we tried to get 90% of that back to the taxpayers. That didn't happen. We tried to get 50% of it back to the taxpayers. That didn't happen. What you got back, or you will get back, in various ways, is about $6.5 billion, about 25% of the surplus. So that's the facts. The money that they're talking about, here's how they get to that number. They're talking about all of the property tax relief, that they've promised in the past, and because you do it every biennial, right? So, but it's really only about $6.5 billion in new property tax relief. So when you hear those numbers, and there is, I can send this to you. You may already have it. There was a really good, I just read it today. There's a really good breakdown of it. If you're a money guy and you want to really dig into it, I'll forward that on to you and you can get it out. It was a real good breakdown of how the gymnastics that they did to get to that number. And it has to do with the Legislative Budget Board and, setting those numbers too as well. But what it does do for you, SB 4 increases the school district resident homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. So that'll be your new exemption, $140,000 on your homestead. If this is one that'll have to be voted on by the people in November. The, yep. The not the SB4, but the constitutional amendment that goes along with that. It'll be a ballot on the ballot referendum. Yes, sir.
Seniors get a larger exemption on that bill?
Say that again.
Seniors get a larger exemption.
I was just about to say that. It also, what it does, now this is, it's contingent upon voter approval. SB 23 raises the homestead exemption for elderly or disabled homeowners from $10,000 to $60,000. So that means you get a $200,000 if you're 65 or over, or if you are disabled, you get that. So if you're over 65 in this room, you've just got a $200,000 exemption on your homestead. I turned 65 last December, so I was kind of excited about that. And then they did buy down the rate in the school districts too as well. Okay, public school financing. Let's talk about that for just a minute. It is $75 billion in school finance, including $8.5 billion in new money. So that's the new part, the $8.5 billion, but they've given the budget is $75 billion. Targeted education reforms plus an additional $2 billion in recapture reduction. That's what I just mentioned in the property tax part. $4 billion is for teacher compensation. If you've been a teacher at least 3 years in the public school system, you'll get a raise. If you're in a small district, which most of Liberty County is, the only one that's not is probably Cleveland, then you will get an additional raise. If you're a teacher, you have to be a teacher, certified teacher, and a classroom teacher. They're targeted classroom teachers. $500 million for support staff. Those are your aides, people that work in the classroom, bus drivers, people like that. Yes, sir.
On the teacher raise, is anything performance-based about that, or just based on tenure?
Correct. And it's really not based on tenure. It's just all teachers if you've been in teaching at least 3 years. So, I wish we could go to merit-based. And that's what the teacher incentive allotment does. It's more of the the more of the merit-based. So there's ways to do that too. That's already in place. So that's already going on. $430 million for school safety. I don't know if the school districts in Liberty County have this problem, but in Hardin County we did. The state came down 2 years and 4 years ago and said you have to do this, and this, but no money to follow it. So this will push some money there to help to put fences up or whatever a school district whatever they've been mandated to do. It'll have a little money there to help them with that. $850 million towards special education, and then $369 million to help with health insurance for teachers. If you talk to teachers, health insurance is a big cost and chews up a lot of their paycheck, and I get that. So that will help with that. Education reforms, and these were some of the things that even though the Republican Party of Texas didn't put as a priority, it's the scuttlebutt, talking about education reforms and parental rights. But one of them is HB 6 was the Teacher's Bill of Rights. Strengthens school safety by updating discipline policies to address rising school misconduct and disruptions, giving schools more tools to protect classrooms and support educators. We could have a whole discussion about what's causing the discipline problems in our public schools, not just in Texas, but across the nation. But it's there. It exists. When I taught school 20 years ago, we didn't have these kind of issues to the extent that they are now. So the Teacher's Bill of Rights will allow, if a teacher has a kid who's just constantly, and it's not just your kid who's, throwing spitballs or whatever, it's a kid who is doing some dangerous activity and disrupting to the class so that the rest of the kids, so we always talk about what about the rights of the rest of the kids, to learn. And so if they're disrupting the classroom to the extent that the teacher can't teach and those students can't be taught and learn, then the teacher has some opportunities to be able to get the kids out, and the administration can follow up with it and make sure that happens too as well. HB 100 prohibits public schools from using instructional materials or curriculum that have been rejected by the State Board of Education. Those are our elected people. we elect our State Board of Education members. We have some pretty good conservative ones in East Texas, and I'm very thankful for that. But the tax dollars should only go toward high quality materials, not just, fly by night stuff. So if the SBOE does not endorse it, or they say no, we're not going to do that, well then they can't use that curriculum. SB 10, this was a 5 or 6 hour debate on the House floor. The presentation of the 10 Commandments in classrooms. So, Wesley, y'all were talking earlier about things to do and all of that. This bill says that the 10 Commandments must be in every classroom, but the school does not have to purchase it. It doesn't mandate that the school provides it. So outside sources must provide. So here's an opportunity for Liberty County Party is to get some posters and get them delivered, and get those. And they need to be age appropriate. You don't want some, for kindergartens, you want language that is appropriate for kids, little kids, as opposed to big kids. But if they are given to the schools must put them up in the classroom. So that's SB 10, SB 11 permits schools to adapt voluntary daily prayer and Bible reading policies with written consent, ensuring instruction isn't disrupted. So this allows for prayer time, not just a moment of silence, but a prayer time and Bible reading. Now, the bill actually says, or other religious text. So if you have a Muslim student and they want to read their book, the Quran or whatever, they're allowed to do that too. But obviously, if Liberty County is like Hardin County, there's not a whole lot of diversity in there, but there is. So it's a religious text. So this is taking back from Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Finally, after all these decades of prayer being out of school, prayer is now back into schools. And the last one I want to talk about, and then I'll answer any questions that you may have, is the education savings accounts. Texas ESA program, $1 billion of new money is invested in education freedom, empowers parents to customize their child's education using state funds. It's run by the Texas Comptroller to support non-public education options, open to all Texas students with priority given to low income and special needs. Covers private school tuition, pre-K, tutoring, textbooks, certification programs, transportation, therapies, meals, and more, and funds used through a secure online marketplace. Now, I want to tell you right now that I know about the resolution that y'all created through the Liberty County Party here, and I highly respect that resolution. Wes and I had a conversation about this, and I took it to heart, very, very much so, because I understood where you were coming from. And as I told Wes, in my district, between emails and phone calls, it was 3-1 to vote for the ESA program. And that's why I ultimately did vote for that program. Just remember that this is not money that comes from public education money, but it's new money designed, in my opinion, the best part of that is inner city schools where these kids have no options. They're in horrible schools, they're low performing schools, and this allows those parents to get those kids into a better situation. And I think that's a good thing. It's helping those kids. Somebody asked me, I think it was Russell, which, was how will this affect Liberty County, Hardin County, San Jacinto County? Not a lot. Not a lot. We've got good quality schools in Liberty County, Hardin County. Are they perfect? No, of course not. And every once in a while, the state has to come in. I know in San Jacinto County, there's a school where the state had to come in and reorganize it and get it back on track. So it happens. But in our rural communities, there's not as many options. There's not as many private schools. There are home schools, obviously, but there are, I say that like it's a building. There are a lot of people who homeschool their children, let me put it that way. And I'm all for that. It's a parent's right to choose what education experience they want from their kid. I'm a former public school teacher. I sat on a public school board for 10 years, and so I understand that side of it too as well. But I want to acknowledge the fact of y'all's resolution and the impact it did, because I considered it and weighed it very, very heavily before I cast my vote for that. So that's the last of the bills. Like I said, I will send you that list and then even some more. He can send it out. I'll be happy to. I don't know how much time I have.
As much as we want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, ma'am?
You said you wanted to address filing days.
Thank you. Let me tell you that, and then I'll come to your question. The last filing day, or the last day we could hear a new bill on the House floor. We were there. We knew we were going to be there till midnight, because it ended at midnight. And we were running through them, trying to get them up there, trying to get Republicans quickly. The Democrats were calling points of order on every Republican bill, trying to stop the process. The points of order would never have been upheld. They were just trying to stall the process so they get more of their bills. And so this was going on, beginning at, I don't know what time we started that day, probably 10 o'clock that morning. And we've been going all day. And we get to 11:30. And the atmosphere began to change. More rumblings and just the volume was changing. In the gallery up above were staff members, Republican and Democrat. They were almost filled the gallery. There was a bunch of people up there watching and waiting. And the clock struck midnight. And I would like to say it was great, like Cinderella and all of that, but it was horrible. The Democrats were cheering because they knew our bills died, and they were successful. I'm telling you, there's been few times in my life that I've been in an instance where I became nauseous. That was one of them. I became nauseous. I had to get out of there because of the cheering and the patting on the back and hollering and the camaraderie on the Democrat side as the Republican majority was squashed. And that's what happened that night. I walked out of there because I couldn't listen to it anymore. It was so deafening because they knew they had won.
They're just mirroring their national cohorts.
Yeah, exactly. And, Speaker Burrows, with the deals he cut, that happened. There's I can't remember now, I think she's from Houston, she might be from Dallas, a Democrat freshman. She got 15 bills passed onto the governor's desk. 15 as a freshman. Democrat. I got 3. As a Republican freshman, I got 3. I was very grateful for those 3. They're local bills. They're helping people here locally. One of them, Highway 242, crossing 59 there in Splendora area. We're going to rename that bridge after a fallen soldier from Splendora, families from Splendora. I never thought that'd be my first bill. But boy, as a daughter of a veteran, I'm very humbled and very excited to get that. And to see this mom and dad, their faces as we knew that got passed and was going on the way to the governor. And the other 2 have to do with setting up some MMDs. And I'm going to be watching. We're not going, and I watched beforehand so that we don't have a Colony Ridge issue. But these are reputable developers. One's in Montgomery County and one's over here outside of Dayton. So I was very proud of those. But I watched as my bills died or got stolen because of decisions that leadership made. So it was sad. It was a sad night. It was a sad night because of that. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is John Carter.
Yes, sir.
I don't have to be to see it on TV. Frivolous lawsuits are costing each one of us $4,600. It's like if I walk out of Walmart and stump my toe, I want $1 million. I know nowadays, everywhere you look, these lawyers are on TV. I got this guy $18 million for being hit by an 18-wheeler, which in some cases is true. But I noticed coming from Louisiana, every other billboard, lawyers. This spring, we were down in Corpus for a softball tournament, and I bet 90% of the ads on TV were for lawyers' lawsuits. So I don't know if it's costing each one of us $4,600 because the cost of prices, the cost of insurance, everything else. So I know it's billed 30 and 39. What happened to those? Nothing, because we have too many lawyers, lobbyists. Is that the problem?
Well, and so your $4,600 sounds about right. I don't know that for a fact, but I know it's a big problem. Texas for Lawsuit Reform was a big influencer in the House for that. I'd have to look up that specific bill, and I can get back with you. Allie, if you'll write that down, I'll be happy to get the answer for you about what happened to it. I don't know right off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
So there's a Senate Bill 30 that kind of says, I don't know the specifics, but it's around
Yep.
that area.
That's the one I was going to mention. Yeah.
And it's for the government.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have that one on some of this, but yeah, there's little bites at that apple to try to, stop these frivolous lawsuits. Yes, sir. So, but the one you mentioned, I'm not sure, but we'll get back with you. Make sure we have your contact information.
And plus, in Louisiana, at one time they tried to pass a bill where the advertising was, and then at the bottom it says, "Now we get 40% of your sales," but that failed.
Yeah.
Because people don't know that if you get $1 million, 40% will go to the lawyers.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Does everybody know something I deal with on a daily basis based on lawsuits? Is the lawyers funding the doctors and getting paid on it? That's a big issue.
Well, it's just like all of the drugs you see on TV. The advertisements for the drugs.
Some of the doctors getting paid based on settlement.
Yep.
And it's like it's in their best interest to make the case worse than it is.
Sure.
It's costing all of us.
Yeah, it is.
Yep, I agree. Thank you for that question. I'll get that information for you. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yes, ma'am. I didn't see you, Sarah. Sorry.
It's okay, I'm short. So my arms are kind of short too. Like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Back to the school choice.
Yes.
Does that money, will that go, at one point there was something in one of the bills about illegals. Will illegal aliens get any of that money?
So let me answer it in 2 steps. The first step is it is against the law to discriminate against legal or illegal. Okay? So technically, yes. But the way it was presented to us, and I will be holding them to the fire on this, is that if you are not a legal resident, the parents who apply, if they can't prove their legal status with, established credit, and all the things that we all have as Texans, then they will not be able to be approved for that thing. That's what we were told, and that's what I'm going to hold to the fire to make sure.
But some of that issue was over out-of-state tuition as well, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if, the last thing we want is Texas involved in a lawsuit against this, and it would have been, because they've been fighting this. I know Ken Paxton's been fighting it all the way up to, heading up to the Supreme Court. So, anyway. Yes, sir.
Are you into any discussions about establishing a strong, legitimate House Freedom Caucus?
There is a Freedom Caucus. I was asked to join that caucus here in May, earlier in May.
Is it remade?
It is. It's totally remade. It totally was, and it's totally remade, because I wasn't going to join it if it was the same thing that they had, prior. So yes, and so the people that are in it is a very strong group, and so we're just going to push it even further to the right and be a bigger voice. I can't talk. Be a bigger voice for that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We talk a lot about divisiveness, and now it's going back many years. I know things have changed, but I remember in the 90s when I was more involved in public control. It seemed like there was more unity. Texans had common sense of working together. There was Republicans would get Lewis and all. Is there any sign of hope for that? I mean,
To work together?
Yes.
Yes, there is. And I don't know who I think we were talking about that. I was surprised at how many votes were 143 to 0 passed, because there's a lot. 80% of the things in Texas are nonpartisan things, and then you've got your core. They've got their core, LGBTQ, liberal this, liberal that, all that, that's all their stuff. And then we have our conservative values. And those are the ones we don't waver on, and we fight, and they fight, but they know they're going to lose because we have the majority vote. So, but we have to sit there and endure 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of debate because you can talk for as long, and up until the last, I think it's the last 2 weeks, the rules say the last 2 weeks, debate is limited to 10 minutes per person, or per debate, excuse me, not per person. So that's shut that down a lot. But before that, they could talk as long as they wanted, and then you would see a Democrat presenting the bill on the front mic, and a line of Democrats at the back mic asking questions, and they all just can ask as long as they want, and these are all planned. You can tell they're reading. They knew what questions are going to be asked, and they're reading. Honestly, the Republicans do that too, so I shouldn't say anything. But it was not. It was scripted. And it was,
Theater.
That's right. And it was designed specifically to run the clock so that on that night they won. And they did win. It was very sad.
That's why we have to get somebody else as speaker here besides a Democrat.
I agree. And I don't know how I don't know what's going to happen with that. We are hearing that Donald Trump is going to endorse Speaker Burrows for another term as Speaker. We're hearing that. I don't know if that's going to happen.
You need to write him.
And if he gets the Trump endorsement, it will be hard for someone to run against that. So I don't know what's going to happen. This won't happen. Obviously, I have a campaign that I'll have to get reelected to, and then all of that stuff will happen after that. Did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
had a question.
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
are we on closing our primaries?
Thank you for asking that question. I meant to ask it earlier. I didn't know if Wes, you may know a little bit more about this, but at the SREC meeting, they passed a rule that would close those primaries and that you would have to register with the Secretary of State's office as a Republican. I don't know what the mechanism for that is. So if you want to...
I'm not sure they know.
That's right. And so that will be interesting. I don't know if maybe they need to wait a season and try to figure it out, but it's all up to the Secretary of State.
According to Dan Hunt, who's our SREC committeeman, there is not currently any mechanism to
That's
do
right.
this in place.
And I asked him that question. I said, what is the purpose? I mean, what is the process for me to register as a Republican in the primary? And there is none. So it's all up to Jane Nelson, our Secretary of State, to figure this out. Now, Jane Nelson's a good Republican, but she can, just like anything else when it comes from a party, the Democrats can do the same thing. Even these Republican Party, these are all just what the Republican Party wants. And that's what they want. They want a closed primary. I do too. But the Secretary of State doesn't have to comply. They don't answer to the Republican Party of Texas. So and the negotiations of whatever might happen. Because I would say that would be a thought. Call their office or email them or whatever and say you're in favor of closed primaries. Always be respectful and say I'm in favor of closed primaries. Yes, sir.
Can you speak more about your other two bills you said, and more specifically the Colony Ridge and how you'll be watching? Because my understanding that the owners of that development own other tracts of land in Liberty County, Hardin ISD, Tarleton ISD, Evers ISD, they just changed the name of the business.
Yeah, the only one I know of is up toward Tarkington. They were buying some land and trying to set up an establishment up there.
105 right between Liberty and Hardin County.
So it's another one of those things that makes my stomach just knot up. But what I was referring to, though, is when that MMD was created, there was some shady doings. And so I made sure with these MMDs that were there that these were reputable developers. They're not targeting people from other countries to come here and own a piece of Texas land, because Mexico's not on that list, Honduras is not on that list, Guatemala, Venezuela, none of those countries are on that list that are banned owning land. So, but these developers aren't targeting that. That's what I was referring to, is just making sure that this is going to be beneficial to the people of Liberty County and Montgomery County, where those respective MMDs are set up. That's what I was referring to. So, yes, sir.
I have a question for you. Can we talk about SB2 a little bit more?
Sure.
So one of the things you told me when we passed our resolution, and actually before we passed our resolution, was just the overwhelming call volume that you were getting that was purportedly
And emails.
And email.
Mm-hmm.
So some information came out last week, I believe, that from what I understand, a group funded by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was doing basically put about $200,000 into organizing calls where they would go out and call people, find out if they were in favor of it, and then route those calls to the representative. And though if they were not in favor of it, they would not route those calls. Were you aware of that? And what do you think about that sort of tactic?
I have not heard about that. Okay. I have not heard about that. It's something I want to check into and find out, because that's deceitful. And I don't care who's doing it, it's deceitful. I wouldn't like it if the Democrats were doing that, and Republicans shouldn't be doing that, either. Your scripture earlier, walk humbly with your God. I got to walk humbly with my God. And so I got to answer to him first. So deceitful practices are not acceptable. So I will check in. I had not heard that.
We got tons of emails from addresses within the district.
Yeah. I even randomly verified because I was suspicious, because I don't know these people, but I randomly I would send some to Allie, go, hey, do you know this person? If they were in Liberty, that kind of thing. And then I would Google search them and make sure they were legitimate, that they weren't just fake people.
And I'm certainly not against, just for the record, I am not against organizations and individuals organizing their friends to pressure and let the representatives know.
That's what you were here for. That's what
and they did a great job of that.
Yeah.
Really, that's how our office was able to record all information on every bill.
Right.
Supporting it, we have a whole system with an address, name, word.
And when I'm on the floor, I've got that all on my computer, and I just scroll and I click that little button, and I can look and say, oh, okay, the district is leaning this way or that way. And so that was helpful. But I'll check into that, Wes. I had not heard that.
I'm not even saying that is something that there should be any sort of legal issues with that, but I think we ought to know.
But if they're doing that, then I want to know all the ones who are opposed as well. I want to know who's for it, who's against it.
I want to know who's doing it.
I told you that day. I want to, the names that were on that resolution, I added to the list. Because those, y'all's carries a little more weight because you're the party, but I put them in there in the system. So, anyway, any other questions? Yes, ma'am. I see that hand.
Yay. You had some really great hall mates. Where your office was.
Yes.
I'm interested to know how your relationship sort of developed with them. Did you have somebody that you went to ask questions, or?
That's a very good question. So for those of you who don't know, we, on the first day of the training in December, we drew a ping pong ball with a number on it, and that's our seniority. And I drew number 9 out of 30. I was so grateful. And it's funny, God has a big sense of humor, because I was praying, God, just give me a single digit. I should have said on one hand, God, on one hand, because he gave me number 9, but to humble me again. But anyway, so what that allows me to do is, of the 30 freshmen, that allowed me, I was 9th to pick my office, to pick my parking spot, and to pick my desk on the floor. And so, it seemed like there was something else, but I don't remember. Anyway, so I knew that hall, the 400 hall on E1, had patriots. Nat Schatzline, Brian Harrison, Tony Tinderholt, David Cook, I'm trying to think all who's down there, Steve Toth, some really good, strong patriots. And I wanted that hall, but I thought, it only had 2 offices open. And I'm like, I'm not going to get them. Well, they were there. Both of them were still there. And so I picked one right next to Tony Tinderholt and was very excited. And then David Lowe chose the other one, who's a patriot too as well. He's a freshman. He chose the one right next door to me. And So to answer your question about did I lean on them, yes, I was in and out of their doors a lot. A.J. Louderback, who's a sheriff, he was across the hall. But I leaned on Tony a lot and took his recommendations. You know, he and his staff would make bill recommendations, as well as my staff did too as well. And I would add those in. I go, okay, Tony thinks this, we think that, this one. And then you had the Republican caucus I was proud to be on the policy committee for the Republican caucus. Every morning we were going over, some days, 18 pages of bills, you know, making recommendations to the Republicans on the House floor. So I looked at all of those. Most of the time they aligned. Every once in a while they didn't, and then I had to, you know, look at it and make the choice, make the vote. But yes, I did lean on them. And Tony Tinderholt is leaving. He's going to he's filed to run in a commissioner's race up in Tarrant County. Nate Schatzline might be leaving. If you haven't heard, Senator Hancock is being appointed, has already been appointed, appointed to work in the comptroller's office, and he will be running. He announced today he's running for comptroller. So Nate is probably going to run for that Senate seat. So those two for sure will be moving on.